Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give some feedback on Adelia's speaking test. So let's jump straight in. Good evening, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Yes, my name is Adelia, but you can call me Adelia.
Thank you. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Do you work or do you study?
So currently I'm a student of 11th grade and this is my last year of school. And in the next year I will study in university.
Cool. So nice simple development. She says that she's a student. She mentions the grade that she's in, and she mentions that it's the last year of last year of her study, and she's going to study in university. Cool. All of that's nice development. Not too long, not too short. Good, 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 good. Immediately noticeable too is the good pronunciation, but on top of that is the human factor of the positivity and the enthusiasm. Of course, there are no marks for positivity, enthusiasm, body language, but definitely it makes a good impression. And what are you planning to study at university?
Basically I want to study some business and economics.
So, nice colloquial use of basically. It's considered by many to be like a parasite word, but it's very natural. It's how people speak. They start with basically. Good.
Which is really interesting for me.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it's interesting for me. I think it's okay to say it's interesting for me, but I really think for higher levels, when candidates have stronger vocabulary, they don't say that it's interesting. They just explain why it's interesting, right? What did you think of this film? Oh, I liked it. Why? Because it was interesting for me. It's like, okay, but, explain why it's interesting instead of saying that it's interesting. Because every candidate in the world knows this word interesting. But let's just listen again.
Some business and economic, which is really interesting for me. And I really want to relate this sphere in my life.
Also nice linking want to. It's maybe not 100% linked, but more or less it's connected. Want to relate this to, okay, the sphere of my life or whatever. Cool, fine, nice development, no problem so far. And why did you decide to study the subject?
Because it's since I was a child, I was really interested in business.
So I was interested in business. Business was interesting for me, but I was interested in business. So knowing those participle adjectives, those id and ing, excited, exciting, frightened, frightening, interested, interesting, kind of important for vocabulary. And again, okay, it was interesting for you, but explain why.
And I read a lot of books about business, economic, finance, and it's really interesting. And I
Again, we get that interesting, and I find that that's a tendency that it can sometimes be a sign. Sometimes it can be a problem with fluency and coherence that the candidate has to repeat their ideas, but sometimes it can be a sign that the candidate might lack vocab to speak about things in more detail. They don't use precise specific words. They use words like good, bad, interesting, not interesting, useful, things like this, without going that extra step further and explaining why it's interesting.
really enjoy with that.
Enjoy it, not enjoy with something. I think candidate has two first languages as I understand, and I think this is the influence of Russian. Enjoy with something instead of enjoy something, but in English, enjoy something.
And I want to relate my life with a business.
We've already had that idea, so now we've had like two responses now where the ideas have been repeated. Not a huge problem. It's only part one. Nothing to freak out about. We can relax. But it is interesting that two answers now have been repeated, and I'm repeating myself. But okay. Pronunciation is great. Intonation is really sustained so far. Really, pronunciation is so clear. Sounds American almost. Good stuff. And what would you like to do then after you finish your studies?
I want to open my own.
Again, want to. Of course, you don't have to say wanna. You can say wanna, but want to. Again, you only hear one T there. Want to. Cool, cool, cool. That's catenation or the closing of the word boundaries. Want to. Good.
Business in China. because China is the country which is really popular with all technology and all the techniques. And I
Yeah, I don't know about techniques here. Again, I think this is like Russian with techniki, maybe. I don't know how techniques sound in English. New technology is fine. New, I don't know, up to date equipment of something. I don't know.
think it's a really good country to
Electronics, maybe? I'm not sure. Techniki. Techniques just sound strange.
open my own business there.
Let's talk about your morning routine now. What time do you usually get up during the week?
During the week, so as I said,
There's a bit of echoing. One, in order to get a high mark for lexical resource, the candidate has to demonstrate a successful ability to paraphrase. Now, this could mean when you give an answer that's maybe not immediately clear and then you start rephrasing things to make it clear. But the simplest way to paraphrase is to avoid using the language of the examiner. So, one very, very basic demonstration of this. What do you like doing in your free time? I enjoy cycling. So you've changed the word like to enjoy, and that's some very basic paraphrase. And so we should be careful that we don't repeat the examiner's language too much, because that again can be a sign that the candidate doesn't paraphrase effectively. And if the candidate often or usually repeats the examiner's language and there's no other examples of successful paraphrase, very difficult to give even a 6 for lexical resource.
I'm
I'll just show you what I mean there. I'll show you the question again.
open my own business there.
Let's talk about your morning routine now. What time do you usually get up during the week? What time do you usually get up during the week? And the answer will echo back as during the week.
During the week, so as I said, I'm a student, and because of that,
And again, there's nothing wrong with repeating and echoing back some parts, right? It's perfectly natural to do that, but it's just something to keep an eye on. We don't want to do it for every answer.
I wake up in 5 a.m., which is
Not in 5 a.m., but at 5 a.m. I would expect a high level student to get that preposition right. Wake up at 5 a.m.
really early. But to be honest,
Nice dropping of the T, but I, glottal stop.
I don't want to wake up at this time, but I have, I must.
Close. I don't want to, but I have to, right? So I don't want to wake up at this time, but I have to, not but I have. So that's a small problem. I think the grammatical thing is called ellipsis. Yeah. I don't want to, but I have to.
And yeah, I think that's
So again, there's a bit of a breakdown there that the candidate is speaking and then there's not like a natural flow where it ends nicely. It's just she's speaking and then suddenly she's hit by I don't know what else to say. So yeah. Let's just watch that answer again. Just how it lacks. It doesn't have that kind of flow. Just watch how the candidate's answer ends here.
the week. So as I said, I'm a student, and because of that, I wake up in 5 a.m., which is really early. But to be honest, I don't want to wake up at this time, but I have, I must. And yeah, I think that's
Yeah. And do you? I think that's, and even she doesn't finish. I think that's all. I think that sums it up. So she could have saved it a little bit with a nice phrase. Now, again, I'm thinking of this. Adelia seems like from her pronunciation is really, really high, and that gives the impression that she's a high level candidate. And so the examiner starts, putting her in that bracket. I would say, from the question, "What is your name?" This is, and I think this is something that all examiners do. From the first question, "What is your name?" the examiner already, after that answer, puts you in a bracket, right? It doesn't mean that that's the final score you'll get. But when someone even if somebody tells me their name, it's enough for me usually to think, okay, this candidate is 5 or 6, or this candidate is 6 or 7, or this candidate is 7 or 8. And so from Adelia's first answer, it's like, oh, that candidate is probably 7 or 8. Now, of course, this isn't the final mark that you'll get. It's just that's what the examiner starts thinking. They start putting you in a particular bracket, in a particular area, and then based on your answers, they adjust that. So I'm critiquing Adelia as if she's a high level student or candidate. Like to sleep longer at the weekend.
Of course, to be honest,
And notice the internet, of course. And so the word, of course, shows that it's obvious, but also the intonation shows that it's obvious. So Adelia really has a talent for pronunciation. She conveys so much through her pronunciation.
I'm a morning person, but in terms of
I'm a morning person. I really like that vocab.
a lot of things to do. I have a school days. I have to study. I have to prepare for the uni, and I really tired of that. And I have to
I am really tired. Again, in Russian, I think they have tire as a verb that they use, not as an adjective. I don't think they say like "ya ustavshim" or something. Some people do, I guess. So I'm tired, and from an examiner's point of view, I can't think of it simply as like, oh, it's because they have that in Russian. I just have to see it as a mistake with the verb to be, which is not the type of mistake we like.
recharge, and the way how I recharge.
We got recharged there. Let's just listen again.
School days, I have to study, I have to prepare for the uni, and I really tired of that, and I have to recharge. And
So I have to recharge without anything. Now, with recharge, we like to use something. I have to recharge my batteries. That's the most common expression. I have to recharge my battery. So there's an attempt at using some kind of idiomatic language, but it's not quite right.
the way how I recharge is I sleep because I have a lack of sleep.
So it's just a small difference between slip and sleep. This I and E, this minimal pair, slip, sleep, slip, sleep, slip, sleep. They are slightly different sounds, and she doesn't quite get it. It sounds a little bit more like slip than sleep, but it doesn't put any strain on me. I know what she means. And what do you usually do after you wake up?
After the wake up,
So again, notice the echoing. What do you usually do after you wake up? After the wake up. So it's okay to do this sometimes, but we don't want to do it all the time. And also, it's after you wake up. So it should come back after I wake up, not after the wake up. So it seems she's using wake up like a noun, after the wake up, but after I wake up. And a simple paraphrase is after waking up, right? You can use a clause after I do something, or you can use a gerund after doing something. After waking up, I usually tra-la-la-la-la.
I have a schedule. For instance, in weekdays, in the work days,
In weekdays? On weekdays, perhaps?
I wake up, brush my teeth, get some breakfast, or grab some food from the stores. And
Feels a bit listy. This is the second time. I didn't mention it earlier, but I'm not a big fan of like just listing things. I like it. I like more cohesive devices. Just watch again. It's not a massive problem here, but
have a schedule. For instance, in weekdays, in the work days, I wake up, brush my teeth, get some breakfast, or grab some food from the stores, and get to the school.
and get to school or go to school is probably better. I know articles are horrible, but there is a simple rule, at least in British English, when we talk about institutions like school, hospital, prison, university. Go to. If you're a pupil, you go to school, not go to the school. It's a minor point, but okay, it exists. But notice those lists: I da 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 and da 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 da. Again, sometimes this can happen when candidates lack fluency. They find it much easier just to list a bunch of different things. Obvious examples like, what food do you like? Burgers, hot dogs, pizza, chicken, beef, rice, pasta, right? A lot of lower level learners rely on listing things to extend their answers. Um, a better answer is, well, I like a bunch of different food, for instance, pizza and hot dogs, but if I'm trying to be healthy, then I'd rather something like pasta or rice or something, right? That's a more cohesive answer.
Let's move on now and talk about maps. How often do you use a map application?
Maps.
To be honest, I
But to be honest, a couple of times now.
use
And I don't know if this is a to be honest moment. Is it? Is it like, whew, to be honest, I use maps very often. Like, eh,
the maps every day,
just maps, not the maps.
because it's really convenient nowadays, and it's
It's convenient nowadays again, but detail here. What's convenient about them? So we don't just want to use adjectives. We want to demonstrate the points that we make. So if I say it's convenient, I need to back that up by saying, well, I. Oh, but let's see if the candidate develops first before I add commentary.
really comfortable for to use. I mean, it's
Cool. I mean is a good example now of a paraphrase. We will get there.
always can up to date.
Okay, it always can up to date. It can always update or it can always be up to date. So up to date is an adjective, to be up to date.
And it's helpful for when you get some unknown
Bit of a reformulation. So she's struggling a little bit with fluency.
destination. You can just use a map, digital map, and it's really helpful and useful for nowadays.
And again, she has to rely on repeating that idea. It's useful and helpful for nowadays without going into too much detail. She does say that it helps you to get to your unknown destination or something, which is good. So we get a little bit of detail, but a bit more would be nice. And again, this affects fluency, but also it affects your vocabulary because the candidate can think, well, the examiner can think, well, candidate didn't extend her answer and she didn't use any precise vocab to talk about the usefulness of maps. Apart from unknown destination, which is good, but more of it would be nice.
And do you think some map apps are better than others?
So if I remember correctly, the candidate misunderstood this question. This question is, do you think some map apps are better than others, right? So you have Google Maps, but you might also have an app by another place like, I don't know, Yandex Maps or something like this. And some people say, oh, well, this map app is better than this map app. Oh, no, you should try this map app. Other people say, no, they are all the same. And that's the question. Are some map apps better than others? But the candidate, I think, if I remember correctly, doesn't understand the question exactly.
Map apps. I mean that I think that the maps, like on the phone, it's more convenient, comfortable to use.
And I think that's twice she's used convenient and comfortable together, almost like she's not quite sure which one to use, so she uses both of them. Just pick one. I think both of them are okay here, but convenient is probably better.
Than like the paper map. Because as I
Cool, I agree, but that's not the question.
said, it's can up to date, and when
It is can up to date. So that's a grammatical problem that's very, very basic. It is can up to date. So, of course, we don't use this be before modal verbs. Not it is should, it is will, it is can.
it's there is a lot of details like the traffics or maybe some
Well, traffic is uncountable, so traffic, not traffics, but that's a minor problem.
department stores.
Cool.
And have you ever used a paper map?
Actually, no,
Cool, nice intonation. Actually, no, really like it.
because we use the digital maps for the last few decades.
So notice this for the last few decades, right? This answers the question, how long? Now, usually with how long, we use this grammar tense present perfect continuous. I don't want to be boring, but we have been using maps online maps for decades. We have been using, not we use, but we have been using. So candidate doesn't demonstrate like that knowledge of slightly complex grammar. And certainly if a candidate is aiming for C1, I would expect them to get some present perfect and present perfect continuous in.
And when I was born, since I was child, I didn't know about the paper map.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so kind of an extension.
Now, in this next part,
All right, let's give some feedback on part one. So the first thing to notice, the key strength here is pronunciation. Already, I think I know what I'm going to give for pronunciation. I don't think it's quite good enough for a 9. We'll see how she does with the 8, but she's certainly on course for the 8 for pronunciation so far. In terms of vocabulary, she has enough to answer the questions, but she has enough to answer the questions in a rather basic way. Sometimes she attempts to give a little bit of extra detail, like department store, traffic, but it's like, oh, just give me a bit more. It's really useful because you can get to your unknown destination. Okay, but just give me a little bit more detail. In terms of fluency, she does break down a little bit. There are some reformulations. She starts speaking, stops. She does this like repair work where she then goes back and repeats it. Sometimes her answers like just stop dead in the middle. At least that happened one time, maybe a second time, I'm not sure. And a couple of times she's just listed things and it's like, well, that could be more cohesive. Grammar, she has generally good control of basic grammar, generally good control. There are a couple of like yikes moment, like I tired or it is can up to date. Just 2 or maybe 3 of those yikes moments. I hope we don't get more of them, but she does control basic grammar reasonably well. And she also has a nice variety of sentences, including some complex structures with like embedded questions, like simple which clauses and things like this. So in terms of variety of sentence types, she's doing okay with that. So let's see how she does in part 2. Part 2 we know is a test of coherence and cohesion. Yeah, it's a test of everything, of course, but this ability to speak at length. This is where, that part of the criteria where it says, can the candidate speak at length? And does the candidate speak at length effortlessly or with some difficulty or with noticeable difficulty or with such a degree of difficulty that it puts a strain on the listener? That's what we look for in this part 2. But the candidate must describe a memorable trip that she took. She should say where she went, who she went with, what she did there. Notice all of the past time here. Again, I've mentioned it so many times on this channel, so many times. You should be lucky. If I was taking IELTS, I would learn my narrative tenses, because about maybe 50% of the time you get like a past focused part 2. And so if you can use past simple, past continuous, past perfect continuous, a few adverbs, some nice sequencing language, then you get the points for vocab, you get the points for cohesion and coherence, and fluency. Well, maybe not fluency. And you get the points for grammar. There's just so much that you can do with narrative tenses. Candidates, I don't think I've had one candidate, or maybe just a couple of candidates where I thought, okay, that candidate, like they used the style that is appropriate for a narrative. If you don't know what narratives are, then look them up. Okay, but let's see how the candidate does. Lots of why this trip was memorable. So, you quite easy. I think this is quite a friendly task, part 2 task, but let's see how the candidate does.
I'd like you to describe a memorable trip. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
So now I'm gonna talk about the trip that I had.
So I'm going to talk about nice.
It was in September, to be precise, in the 9th September.
On the 9th of September. We don't need to be that precise, but if you are going to be that precise, then, those prepositions of time. We've had a couple of mistakes now, like in 5 o'clock or in weekdays or in 9th of September. Candidate relies heavily on in. Again, this is a transference error just from Russian, just translating v as in. V is sometimes in, but it is not always in.
All there was because at the time was my birthday.
Bit strange. All there was because at the time, just a bit.
September. All there was because at the time was my birthday and it was like a present from my mom.
Cool.
And we had a trip to Vietnam. Actually, it was my first time when I was
It was my first time, not there was my first time.
there, and and I got so much unforgettable memories.
Okay, I got so many unforgettable memories because memories are countable. But I don't know why the candidate is jumping straight to the last question. Explain why the trip was memorable. So there's nothing, the examiner will not say, okay, I'm going to remove marks because you too early mentioned why it was memorable. No, but the problem is that when you start describe a memorable trip you took, you say where you went to Vietnam, and then you jump to the last question. If you talk about those unforgettable memories, where do you go from there? Do you go back then to who you went with and what you did there? It's just difficult to organize it. So with part two, you don't need to make things more complicated. You can follow the parts through, part by part by part. Say where you went, who you went with, and what you did there. Take 1 minute to talk about this stuff, and then transfer to the memorable moments. But let's see how she does.
Like in the first day, we get
On the first day, not in the first day. We got, not get. So it's past time.
To the city, which city called
We get to the city, which city called. We got to the city, which is called.
Nha Trang. And it's popular with the beach and some facilities and
Candidate's not quite sure if facilities is the right word, and she's quite hesitant.
there was a lot of adventure places.
There were, not there was. But, my dad says there was a lot of places, so it's okay.
And at the first day we went to
On the first day, not at the first day. So we have big problems with those prepositions of place. Now, we teach these prepositions of place and prepositions of time. Prepositions of time. Usually in, at, on. We teach them at elementary. Of course, candidates can forget them. Students of English can forget them. But the fact that they're taught at elementary shows that it's high frequency language and really expect students to, have quite good control of in, at, and on, and the candidate unfortunately doesn't.
Zoo. It was actually another island, and it's called the Pearl, which is really popular in this country, and all tourists go there.
But notice we haven't really had past time yet. We've only had had a trip and was. So only two past verbs, had and the verb to be in the past. More past time would be nice.
There was four. It was divided to four.
So she's not sure between it was, there was, it was, there was. She's kind of like there's a battle in her brain between two different sentences.
Parts. So the first one is zoo park. There was just a park.
Not zoo park, again, that's a direct translation from Russian, but just zoo.
Botanic park, and there was some a lot of places to take a photo and etc. And there I just taste the Vietnamese cuisine, which was at that island, and I didn't like it to
On that island.
be honest, because there was a lot of
Okay, that's the good use of to be honest. I didn't like it, to be honest. That's good.
and I didn't like it to be honest, because there was a lot of fish, and to be honest, I don't like the fishy flavor and all
Cool. Fishy flavour, that's good vocab.
in this, like all related to
But we're going to kind of a little bit away, describe a memorable trip you took. And really, do we really want to spend time if we're talking about, oh, wow, I went on this memorable trip and I tried this Vietnamese cuisine and I didn't really like it because, like, there was a lot of fish and it had this fishy flavor. To me, that's not really, talking about a memorable trip and talking about why the event was so memorable, but because you didn't like the fishy food. It's like, it's not quite on topic, is it?
fish. And then we just had a good time with in the roller coaster places.
Okay,
And
okay, so she uses roller coaster places instead of like theme park. Um, but okay, roller coaster places isn't a bad way of explaining it.
Thank you.
All right, so comments on that. So a noticeable lack of past tenses, which is a bit unfortunate. Candidate doesn't have too much difficulty filling the 2 minutes. She can speak at length. She's okay. She has to kind of go off topic a little bit, and there are some noticeable breakdowns, but I think her fluency is okay for this part. Grammar, there's just not much to judge because she just relies on like using simple stuff. There are a few simple mistakes in there, and critically, it's we want candidates to demonstrate. English has, it's very debatable. How many tenses does English have? Some people say 2, some people say 3, some people say 8, some people say 12, some people say 13, some people say 26. I am on team 8. But what we can say for sure is that we have a lot of variety and flexibility in English when we talk about the present, the past, and the future. A lot of flexibility. And so candidates who are hoping for a high score for grammar, when they're talking about the past, they really have to show at a minimum that they know that go is the present and went is the past, and get is the present and got is the past. Like, that's the absolute minimum. Forget about like was doing, had done, had been doing, could have done, would have done, might have done. And the candidate unfortunately doesn't show consistent control of that basic grammar. And for me, that's a bit of a worry. My first impression was that her grammar was okay, that she was controlling the grammar reasonably well, but watching it back, you just notice a few more details where you think, yikes. I'm being very negative. I'm sorry about that.
All right, so you've been talking about a memorable trip that you took. Now let's talk about the importance of travel. Why do people enjoy traveling?
I think that to travel is really important for every people, because
Every person.
I think it's a good opportunity to visit new places and try new cuisine for them, and also to meet new people, and then like get their maybe social media and stay in touch with them.
Cool. Okay, so we get some nice vocab here. We have a reasonably well developed answer and some topic specific vocab, so a decent start.
Do you think it's more important for a person to visit different places in their own country or to visit different countries?
I think both of them it's really important.
Both of them are really important, not both of them, it's really important. So, again, it's quite basic grammar.
Because I think you have to know the places in your country, like another cities, because it's your country.
Other cities, not another cities. Another with singular. Another city, one, but other cities.
And also, I think that it is important to travel to another country because we have so a lot of opportunities.
So many opportunities, or such a lot of opportunities. So many opportunities, or such a lot of opportunities. Not so a lot of opportunities.
And
And again, I guess it's Russian tak mnogo, maybe. Tak mnogo, so a lot of.
I think it's a good way to try new things.
So again, it's just a little little bit unsatisfying in terms of the fullness of the answer. I don't really walk away with a big sense of why it's important to visit. She said both of them are important, but she hasn't really fully explained why. So I tried digging in a little deeper here.
You mentioned it's important to see different parts of your own country. Why is it important to see different parts of your own country?
So I'm really not sure how, because I'm not sure if it's a fluency issue or a vocab issue. That's the reason I asked this question. I'm going to dig deeper and see if she can find that vocab to explain to me why it's important. Now, this is also an idea generation thing, and I don't want to be ageist, but I guess Adelia, she's in her final year of school, so I guess she's 17, 18. Now, I don't know about Adelia, but I know about myself. When I was 17, 18, I couldn't speak about these wider world IELTS topics. I just couldn't do it. If people asked me, in my own language, in English, why is it important to visit other places in your country? 18-year-old Glyn, 17-year-old Glyn wouldn't have had a satisfying answer to that, because 17, 18-year-old Glyn didn't really have thoughts about those kinds of things. So sometimes, this part 3 can be very challenging if you are a younger person.
In my opinion,
So she uses good functional language. She's used I think, and now in my opinion.
you have to know your country, like places that you have, maybe some nature destinations.
Why is it important? Because, in my opinion, you have to know your country. It has some nature destinations, but not really explaining why it's important.
Or mountains, and you have to visit all of them. But I think it's a choice of every people
Every person.
to try new things, and maybe if you want to visit another city in your country.
And again, she just stops if you want to visit another city in your country, and the intonation suggests that she's going to continue, but she stops. So I think there's a problem with idea generation there. I don't think she's mentioned that, oh yeah, I think it's very important. But now when she has to explain why it's important, it's like, oh God, I have no idea why it's important.
And do you think traveling is suitable for all kinds of people?
I don't think that, because not all people can allow them to travel around the world.
I don't know about this allow. Again, I think it's a Russian thing. Позволить себя or something like this. Again, it sounds fine in Russian, but it's just a direct translation. At times, the candidate, I can hear her speaking Russian, but with English words.
Maybe it's not for them affordable,
Cool. It's not affordable. Great.
and it's maybe too expensive for them, because I don't think that traveling is for
I don't think the traveling is, not I don't think the traveling it's. Again, I know Russian reasonably well, and so I can say again, this is a direct translation. Traveling, diffis, это, da. Again, it's Russian, but with English words.
poor people.
Let's just listen to that again.
Because I don't think that traveling is for poor people.
And I think the candidate knows that she said something that, is maybe potentially controversial. Now, I know Adelia doesn't hate poor people. Adelia's not against poor people. She's just making the point that if you don't have enough money, then, you probably, if you don't have a lot of money, probably you spend it on things that you need. And traveling, as much as it's nice and it's important, it's not as important as, buying food, for example. And so she's making that point that it might not be suitable, but the way that she says it, could sound like it's some type of discrimination against poor people. But I know that this is not what Adelia means. I know. But she has difficulty articulating, explaining, like, very precisely her opinion. And I think that's probably a vocab thing.
Let's move on now and talk about the future of travel and tourism. How do you think travel will change in the future?
I think it will change in the maybe of in I think it will
So yeah, we all have those moments. Adelia is not the first candidate on this channel who, in response to a question, simply breaks down and doesn't know what to say. It's a horrible feeling. Trust me, I know how it feels. It's a horrible feeling. But okay, it happens.
change uh, because we have so much like new development of technology, and I think we will have some maybe new planes or like the vehicles of the new ways of transport to travel.
Cool. I like that she found ways of transport. I think we call like modes of transport or means of transport, maybe. Modes of transport is probably better.
And what kind of new service?
So, candidate does a little facepalm. Try to maintain your positive body language. I know it's tough. I know sometimes we cringe and we think like, "Oh God, this is going terrible." But save the negativity for after the test. After the test, sorry, I just looked at the picture of my face and it just looks funny. You can use that negativity after the test. That's where you can do your face palming. That's when you can do my, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. When you're doing the test, try to maintain a level of positivity, even if you feel like it's not going so well.
Or facilities do you think hotels might offer in the future?
This is a difficult question. What facilities might hotels offer in the future? The advice I gave the candidate after the test was if you have a question about the future, just talk about AI or talk about robots or talk about virtual reality, right? So, I think in the future, hotel rooms will have like their own type of virtual reality places where, instead of watching TV, you can, become part of a movie or something like this. But, I think this will happen not only in hotels, but I think this will be just something that everyone has. Or I think you'll have like robot assistants. So instead of having people who clean your room, maybe they will have robots that clean your room and blah, 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 blah. Robots, AI, VR. It's always a safe answer when we're talking about the future.
Maybe they will offer some facilities in terms of maybe
In terms of is good.
food.
Yeah, food.
They will provide some different varieties of food.
They already do that. I don't know if you know, but hotels already provide different varieties of food.
Like the Chinese cuisine or
Yeah, even Chinese cuisine.
Vietnamese,
Even
and
Vietnamese.
also maybe
That's not a new development for the future.
some facilities in terms of
Repeating language there, just a little bit.
maybe they will allow much more pool places or like
More pool places.
department stores in hotel, which is really popular for nowadays.
Cool, but the question isn't about nowadays, it's about extra facilities in the future. Always difficult to speculate and predict the future. But like I say, if you have to predict the future, AI, robots, VR.
And finally, do you think space tourism
Again, a bit of negativity, but okay.
will become common in the next few decades?
I think yes, because
I think so, not I think yes, I think so.
Elon Musk, maybe you know him.
I don't know him personally, but I've heard of him.
He he trying to
He is trying to. So this often happens, right? Once you have a little bit of stress, a little bit of a breakdown, once you have a few of those negative thoughts about like, oh, I didn't answer that question right, that can affect the rest of your performance. There's a famous lesson in chess that in chess the mistake that you make isn't why you lose the game. Your reaction to the mistake that you make is why you lose the game. Anyone can make a mistake, and it's all about how you recover from that mistake. And for me, the candidate feels like she made a few mistakes with some of the answers, and now she's busy thinking, oh my God, that was a mistake. And now, as a result, some of her grammar breaks down too.
Travel to the Mars, I guess, if I'm not wrong. And I think in the future we will
So candidate definitely shows a willingness to speak at length. I definitely think in terms of fluency and coherence, she shows a willingness to speak at length and she attempts to develop. I think the problem with the development is vocab
travel to another planet.
and idea generation, which is tough.
Not only countries, planets.
Cool, I get it.
Do you think people will enjoy this experience?
I think yes.
I think so.
In my opinion, it's really interesting to travel not only
Again, we get that it's interesting, but let's see if we see why.
around the world, but only discover new places in our galaxy, like to travel to visit Mars or Moon, maybe.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test.
Alrighty then, so let's get into scores. Fluency and coherence. I think we have enough for a 6, and I'm going to explain why. So, the length of the candidate's answers. Are generally decent. She attempts to keep going and develop. Some answers are slightly off topic and include some irrelevant details. I think especially in part 2 there is some noticeable reformulation, but this doesn't put a strain on the listener. Sometimes you get reformulation, repair work, repeating things, which really puts a strain on the listener. I didn't feel like it was painful to listen to Adelya speak, and I think probably there is enough for a 6 there. Lexical resource, I'm going with 5. So, while you were generally okay with your responses in part 1, as the test went on, it became quite clear that you didn't have enough depth in your lexical resource to explain your ideas clearly. You often relied on basic words and basic responses. No, it's useful, it's interesting, things like this. Sorry, I don't know why that formatted like this. Oh, don't know why something just disappeared. Okay, I'm going to type that back out again. Okay, while you answered some questions well in part 1, okay, we'll leave it like that. So that's lexical resource. You offered some extra details, and some of those things were okay, but for me, just not quite enough. Sorry, just a bit of a problem with formatting on this board. Yeah, it's not enough to say that something is interesting. You really have to, go a little bit deeper and explain why it's interesting. It isn't enough to say that it's important to visit other places in your city or in your country. You have to really go into those details and explain why it's important. So you could say this is a fluency and coherence problem, that it's undeveloped, but for me, it's a lexical resource problem. Grammatical range and accuracy, this is a tricky one too, and I think, maybe I'll get hate for this, but I think there's enough for a 6. So firstly, you really have to clear up some of your basic mistakes. There are some examiners that will hear those mistakes and think, I can't give a 6. I simply can't give a 6 to a student that, can't reliably tell the difference between present and past, makes mistakes with the verb to be. And certainly I've been that examiner with many candidates on this channel where I've said no. But I think your range of sentences and use of embedded and relative clauses saves you here. I don't think there's a great range of structures, but the range of sentences. So these are two important features. Sorry about this. These are two important features in the grammatical range and accuracy. Range of sentences and range of structures. Candidate has a good range of sentences, but the range of structures is limited. I think I do have a video on this channel talking about grammatical range and accuracy. I'm not sure. If you're not sure about the difference between sentences and structures, look it up. Pronunciation, I think they can award an 8 for this. While it's not perfect, there are some minor lapses, mistakes in pronunciation. Especially with like beach, betch, or ship, sleep, slip. A couple of those like minimal pairs, a couple of those little vowel sounds are just not quite on the money. But, despite this, your pronunciation is crystal clear and can be understood effortlessly. You also show a very wide range of phonological features. So all of that stuff in English with our vowel sounds, our t, our catenation, link it, want to, things like this. Intonation is really nice too. While there were a few occasional lapses in intonation, I felt like your intonation was really, really natural. It was clear, like the emotions were coming through in your speech. So pronunciation is really, really high level. Not quite enough for a 9, but I think good enough for an 8. And so I have 6.5, 6.8, and I need to figure out what score that is. I think that's overall 6. So a few people mentioned, you know, she deserves 6.5 in the comments. I expect the candidate to get 6.5 or even possibly a ceiling of 7 in the real test. Things to work on. I think the first thing I would go with, even though it wasn't the weakest score, I think you have to control your grammatical accuracy better. Now, how you do that, unfortunately, I can't tell you how to do that, right? A lot of candidates, when we do these speaking tests, at the end they say, oh, do you have any questions? And sometimes they say, yeah, how can I get better at grammar? That's a teaching question. I can't give a meaningful answer of like how you can get better at grammar. Learn grammar. There are many different ways of learning grammar, and that's not what my job here is. That's not what I'm on YouTube doing right now. I might do that in the future, some tips and some advice and some stuff about learning English. But the purpose of these videos is to show you what an examiner would give you and to say what you should improve. So your control of grammatical accuracy, you have to control your grammatical accuracy better. That's what I'll say. You need to go a little deeper with your vocab. Do you like that film? Yes, I do. Why? Because it's good. Why is it good? Oh, because it's interesting for me. Have to go deeper. Do you like that film? Yeah, I do. I really like the main character. I thought, you know, he was quite a complicated character because you weren't really quite sure if he was like a good guy or a bad guy. Now, of course, in the end, it turns out that he was a good guy, but he definitely did a lot of questionable things. And, you know, that made me think about my own life, that, you know, it's not everything is so black and white, right? That's what we mean by going deeper. Explaining why it was interesting instead of simply saying that it's interesting. Minor point 2, try to control your negative body language. I know it's a minor point and it feels like maybe I have no right to tell you that. I think in general, your body language was very positive, especially at the beginning, going through. But then when we got to part 3, you became quite negative. It's okay to break down. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to mess up. Sometimes we all do it. But try to keep your body language positive throughout the whole test. It definitely leaves a better impression. Any other areas of improvement? Pronunciation is great. Fluency and coherence, yeah, I don't think I'll mention anything about that. So yeah, for me, overall, candidate got 6.0. At the time, I thought maybe the candidate deserved a 6.5, but looking back at it, yeah, those grammar mistakes and the lack of vocabulary was a problem there. Also, one more thing I'll add is learn how to paraphrase. I hope you have a teacher. I hope you have a tutor who can work on these things with you. I don't expect you to know, exactly how you can fix all of these problems. But if you have a teacher or you have a tutor, you can show them this video and maybe you can work on those things together. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. It's quite a long one, 55 minutes already. If you would like your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you would like me to check your IELTS writing, then you can request this in the Telegram channel. A link to the Telegram channel is given in the description below. But I'll leave it there for now. Have a wonderful evening and see you all soon. Bye-bye.